Hello and welcome to an educational policy proposal on discrimination against Roma youth. Today, we will talk about how we can help this segregated community in schools. But first, what do you know about Roma people? Well, let's learn starting now. It is believed that the Roma people originally came from northern India and were forcibly removed in the 15th century. They then started traveling towards Europe, and then some settled in Andalusia. The Catholic monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella, issued the first anti-Roma decree, forcing assimilation by prohibiting their language, dress, and customs. Under Franco's dictatorship, Roma were marginalized, facing poverty and limited access to education, employment, and healthcare. 75% of the Roma population in Spain disappeared during World War II, during Franco's regime. With the Spanish Constitution post-Franco, Roma gained more rights and protections under the law, promoting equality and anti-discrimination. The Roma community in Spain still faces significant social challenges, including high poverty rates, limited access to quality education, and ongoing discrimination. Despite efforts by the government and NGOs to promote inclusion and equality. But how is this discrimination affecting Roma children in schools? Let's find out. Let's start with the problem statement. Roma students often face prejudiced attitudes in schools, leading to marginalization in the classroom. Due to a multitude of underlying factors, many Roma children leave school before completing compulsory education. In European countries, the stigma surrounding Roma communities fuels both societal and institutional biases. Lack of understanding of Roma culture in schools can lead to alienation and an underrepresentation in school curriculums. These stereotypes, like the discriminatory term gypsies, are used to further repress the community. Let's look at our affected stakeholders. Roma students, the primary group affected, facing exclusion, low educational outcomes, and social biases. A survey shows that 25% of Spanish parents do not want their children to share the same classroom with Roma students. Sources highlighted the high dropout rate of Roma students in Spain, noting that about 65% leave school early. Roma families face barriers in supporting their children's education due to economic instability and fear of prejudice from schools. Despite the barriers families face, they still have high expectations for their children in education. Roma families often deal with educational and economic barriers, which can limit their ability to support their children's academic success, though many value education and support their children's learning. Teachers often lack the training or resources to create inclusive environments, and some may hold unconscious biases that impact their teaching. Without this training, educators may hold unintentional biases that negatively impact Roma students' learning experiences. Other students and families are impacted by the lack of inclusion, as discriminatory environments create division rather than intercultural learning. This lack of diversity limits opportunities for intercultural exchange, which could foster greater understanding and cohesion among students. Let's dive into current policies. First up is the Law on Comprehensive Protection of Children and Adolescents from Violence. This law addresses violence, including bullying, but does not specifically focus on ethnic or racial discrimination. Roma children often face bullying and discrimination in schools due to stereotypes and racism. Though the lawmakers had a groundbreaking initiative with sufficient protocols in place, it was missing something that Spain has always been struggling with: money to fully benefit Roma children. Supplementary measures addressing structural discrimination and cultural barriers are essential. Next is the EU framework for national Roma integration strategies. The EU and Spain adopted an integration strategy that includes measures related to education, aiming to reduce dropout rates and improve school attendance for Roma children. Key outcomes included teacher training, inclusive education practices, and legislative recommendations to combat segregation. The in-school project faced several challenges in its implementation. This included systemic racism and segregation, community resistance, social and economic barriers, policy gaps, and sustainability. These challenges highlighted the importance of addressing broader societal inequalities alongside education reforms to achieve sustainable progress. Now let's look at the proposed policy solutions. The proposed policy aims to create a more inclusive and supportive environment for Roma children in Spanish schools through teacher training on cultural sensitivity, mentorship and support programs, family and community engagement, and anti-discrimination curriculum. Introduce lessons on Roma history, language, and cultural contributions into the national curriculum to create understanding and appreciation among all students. To reach this goal, schools can collaborate with Roma community leaders and scholars to develop content to further reinforce the cultural contributions to the curriculum. Schools can host Roma Cultural Awareness Days or events to build mutual respect among students and staff. Seeing as how a majority of Roma families live in poor neighborhoods with little resources to support their children, supporting families through economic means could increase the ability for parents to participate in their child's education and reduce economic barriers. One way to support Roma students is to create scholarships and incentives for those who complete secondary education and pursue higher education or vocational training. To promote mobility among Roma students, schools could offer free or subsidized transportation for Roma students to ensure regular attendance, particularly in rural or marginalized areas. By having educators and faculty participate in mandatory, incentivized, cultural sensitivity training to implement ongoing professional development for educators, focusing on addressing unconscious biases and teaching strategies for working with diverse student populations. Doing so could bridge cultural gaps and provide role models for Roma students. To promote the education track for Roma students, higher education institutions could offer targeted scholarships or incentives for Roma students to pursue teaching careers. Though parent-teacher meetings are a common practice, Roma families tend to be left out of their child's schooling. Establishing regular parent-teacher meetings and workshops will involve Roma families in their children's education. With the current climate of discrimination in schools against Roma individuals, schools should employ mediators from the Roma community to facilitate communication between schools and families, ensuring mutual understanding and collaboration. The law mentioned earlier does not really touch upon the discrimination and segregation against Roma children. By setting up a government body to monitor and address segregation in schools, schools can be a more comfortable and less harmful place for Roma students. Spain can implement policies that prevent the clustering of Roma students in segregated or lower-performing schools, ensuring access to diverse, high-quality educational environments. Spanish schools can adopt UDL principles to make lessons accessible to all students by offering multiple ways to present information, such as audiovisual aids and hands-on activities, and allowing students to demonstrate learning through varied methods, such as written work, oral presentations, or creative projects. The Spanish government can provide Roma students with access to technology, such as laptops or tablets, to enhance learning and bridge digital divides. Regular collection and analysis of data on Roma student enrollment Attendance, academic performance, and dropout rates will help identify gaps and measure progress. Conducting annual feedback sessions with stakeholders will assess the effectiveness of implemented policies and identify areas for improvement. Publishing annual reports on the progress of Roma inclusion efforts will lead to a more transparent evaluation and encourage active efforts from community supporters. What are the expected outcomes of the policy solutions? By creating a more inclusive environment, Roma students are more likely to stay in school and perform better academically. Educators and students will gain a better understanding of Roma culture, reducing discriminatory attitudes. Teachers will gain a better understanding of Roma culture through teacher training and guest visits. Engagement with Roma families will help to build trust and cooperation between schools and the Roma community. Having mediators will also give Roma families a helping hand when dealing with any residual discrimination, as they will have someone in the space to support them. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this video both educational and motivating. Do you think we can make a difference? Leave a comment below.